Boy, this year with the food plots and the drought we've had, we're really fighting an uphill battle. But the saving grace is we're getting into the end of summer and we can plant our late summer plots going into early fall. And that's where you can save the day, because moisture is only on the increase from this point on. We actually got an inch of rain last night, which is crazy. It's been so dry. One of the biggest rains we've had since the 1st of May, actually. I think we had one other one at 1.2 inches. So this was right around 1.05. So pretty happy with this. But a lot of you are experiencing drought. A lot of you had great plans. You know, I know better just through experience 25 years ago, 30 years ago, but planting spring clover is always a 50-50 proposition, because if you get drought, the clover gets established poorly, if at all. I've had it where it's been smoked out completely. Say 9 weeks of less than an inch of rain in the UP on sandy soil. There was no clover left at that point. So clover is not very drought resistant when it's planted in the spring in that first year. So you want to plant it with a cover crop. We planted clover out here with oats. You can see behind Dylan over here, you can see where there's a little bit more oats. But when you don't get that growth, you get a lot of weeds. Weeds always keep coming. So what I've done here is we took care of the weeds before we started and planted. So this is fairly weed free now. But I've even come back in here and spot sprayed for weeds and killed out our earlier season of seeding of clover and oats. Oats is a cover crop. You want that nurse crop on, just like they'll plant with alfalfa. The problem is, again, if you have areas that don't grow, the weeds start to creep in. You don't get a really strong covering of clover like we should have had by now. So then, in this case, we want to plant clover here. This is what we want. We want in this field. It's just a pass-through plot. We have a bigger plot over here that's corn, brassicas, power greens. That's just a pass-through onto that one. And that sets up the redneck blind really nice behind me, where we can actually hunt back there, sneak in behind here. It's a great little pass-through plot. Leo 2 years ago missed Lucky. He was 13 point then, 4-year-old. Really nice buck. So we have great opportunities here. It's a fun place to sit. And we want that clover base. We're not going to have it going into this year. Well, it's end of July, and I hope most of you by this point in the year have been able to check out our food plot seed company, WHS Wildlife Blends. We've had clients and customers in almost 50 states by now. And the cool thing is, you know, I don't like you to pay shipping if you don't have to. We're not going to have a giant dealer network. That's not the way we are. We built a business on experience and providing good information and quality products. People ordered online. But if you live in the southeast Minnesota, southwest Wisconsin area, Nelson Agri Center out of Viroqua and Prairie du Chien is our only dealer in the country. I don't know if that's the way it'll be in the future, but they're very important to us because people in this region can actually travel to them, whether you're in northeast Iowa or northwest Illinois, and pick up that seed without shipping. So give them a call, check them out, and check out the food plot company. Check out the website if you haven't done so already. And I really appreciate you guys giving us a look for your food plot planting needs this season. I like clover as a pass-through. They eat it down to the dirt anyways. It establishes a pattern of use. They use the mock scrape out here, and it just, again, it creates a great opportunity for bow hunting. Now, I had to kill certain areas of this, and what do you do at this point? Well, in this case, we still have some clover in here. We have some alfalfa, we have some chicory, some bird's foot trefoil. That's part of our perennial plot power blend. We love that. That's what I've loved. I've experimented with those blends for 25 years, and I really like that. But in order to establish this as a future plot of our perennial plot power, I have two options at this point. Well, I could spray it out and just start over. I think we have enough volume of the clover in here and chicory, bird's foot trefoil, and alfalfa that I don't want to do that. And so the next option is I can establish this if I want to keep it. Then I can come in here and I can plant the same blend, perennial blend again, and I can add a full boat of Brassica to it, which is what we have done. So we added Brassica to this. We got it in before this rain. We're getting some growth. Got it in before the last rain, actually. So some is a little bit older because it's dry. Some's not even growing yet, but it's starting to come in. We have little baby Brassica plants right down here. You can barely see, just little small ones, little sprigs of clover coming in. So we have a little bit of Brassica coming in. We have larger plants down here. But what I'd like to see in this area is a full cover of Brassica. What's great about Brassica, it doesn't compete with the clover, so you put the full amount of Brassica here. Our blend is 8 pounds per acre. We sell it in half acre, 4-pound bags. But I want to have that Brassica in here We plant the full per acre amount. It doesn't compete with the clover. The brassica gets eaten out and dies during the winter time, and what we're left with in the spring is pure clover, chicory, bird's foot trefoil, alfalfa. It's that perennial mix that I want out here that we can manage for a decade or more to come, which is really cool with something like that on a smaller plot like this. Now we have another option. I could wait a little bit longer and I can plant oats. We have our cold hardy oats. We have our tundra oats, our tundra peas. That's something that I could add. Peas are short growing, fast growing. I could add that mix in more Labor Day weekend. The oats die out over the winter time. We get a really good covering of oats and peas for a very quality blend going into the fall. Some of this brassica in here would have been, we wouldn't have the brassica, we just still have the perennial blend. So we'd have a little bit of the perennial that's going to be appreciated by October. Then we'd have the peas, the oats. The peas and oats die over the winter time. We're left with, again, pure clover the following next spring. Now another option is we come in here and we look at, boy, this is a complete failure. And it's already September 15th. It's starting to get into closer to within a month of our first frost. That means the oats aren't going to be very appreciable. Get into the last week of September. You haven't been to the property well, you come back and there's decent clover here and there, but a lot of dead patches. You didn't get much growth. Awesome time, especially more like October 1st around here would be 200 pounds per acre of winter rye, more like 150 pounds per acre of winter rye in mid-September, and all the way into mid-October. If you still have some warm growing left to do and some moisture coming, some days in the 60s, 70 in the mix in there, great time to put about 200, 250 pounds per acre of rye. The whole idea behind is that is you want that low lush crop of rye. It'll act as a weed suppressant and nurse crop going into the spring. And then before that rye gets 2 feet tall, you can mow it out and kill it. Just mow it down to 6 inches. It won't hurt the clover at all. In fact, it'll strengthen the clover and make it grow thicker. Or you can spray it with clethodim, which is a grass-specific herbicide, and you get the rye out. It's kind of why I've planted a lot of, I used to mix them 50-50, meaning half the time I'd use brassica and clover, the other half the time I'd wait a month and use rye and clover. I'd never mix the rye and the brassica. That's a no-no. Or wheat and rye, oats and rye. Keep those separate. But what I found over the years is I do like the brassica option better. You can get full volume brassica, and in your area maybe they don't eat the brassica as well, so you could use the tundra oats, rye combination, oats and peas, or tundra peas, the cold hardy peas. You can do that too. But what I like seeing in those cases is that with the brassica or our tundra oats, there's nothing left in the spring. All you have to do is mow the clover, take care of it, and it'll take care of you for a decade or more to come. So bottom line is, when you get into this time of year, we've experienced a lot of drought. Now we have plots out here that we've gone into. We have one down on the bottom, down here behind Dillon. It's about a quarter mile down, that we can't wait to plant, and we've had drought the entire time. It was a new plot. We just had it bulldozed. So adding fertilizer, adding a lot of plot start to it. And then what we'll do down there is we've been spraying, killing vegetation, and we'll add a brassica, our brassica, big boost brassica, our perennial plot power. We'll mix those two together and we'll be left with our perennial plot power in the spring. The brassica will be gone over the winter time. And if all else fails, even then, if we plant that and we have no growth because of lack of rain, we get into mid-September, we can add that 150 to 200 pounds per acre of rye over the top and enjoy the season. Bottom line is, you have to take care of the weeds. This plot is doing pretty well as far as weed growth. There's some areas of concern that we can mow out next year with the clover. You might be experiencing right now where you have a mix of weeds and not much of your intended target. Weeds are not good. The weeds that are growing out here, the deer do not eat. That's why they're growing. It's not a good thing. They're not going to add any value when they turn brown in the fall. They're just taking up space and nutrients from everything else around. So for some of you, you're looking at your plots right now as a total failure. Spray them. I'd spray with a mix of 2,4-D and glyphosate, 1 pint per acre of 2,4-D, 2 quarts per acre of glyphosate. You can mix those two together. Spray it on your plot, wait about a week, and plant. Now if you're in southwest Wisconsin, southeast Minnesota, southern Michigan, central Minnesota, central Wisconsin, over into New York, then your timing for planting a brassica crop with clover underneath, or just brassica in general, is you can plant that all the way up to mid-August. If you're down south, you can almost push it to the end of August. Down in Kentucky, West Virginia, all the way down to Louisiana, you can plant it probably September 1st. But bottom line is, you can get something growing here. You can even plant, we have our perennial plot power, we plant that on one side, plant the brassica on the other. That's what we typically do in a plot where we want that diversity, and it's more of a holding plot. This is not a holding plot, this is a pass-through plot. Holding plot, we plan to hold the deer till dark because it's big enough and has enough diversity to do so. So there's still options for you. Don't give up. There's a lot of people that use my ultimate no-till. You know, normally we'd have buckwheat on a lot of our plots where we're doing, we have buckwheat about 10, 12 inches high at most because we've had a complete lack of rain. So we had a failed germination, partial germination. Some fields look better than others, but we don't have that thigh-high to waist-high buckwheat like we always do because it's been so bad this year with drought that we just haven't gotten that growth. But it's not all for naught. We still have a little bit of buckwheat in those areas. And a little bit of buckwheat thatch when it's dead provides great protection for the brassica. And even if it's open bare soil like this, we can throw the seed on the soil before rain and expect great results. So brassica, clover, birchfoot trefoil, alfalfa, chicory, rye, oats, wheat, they all do really well throwing on the ground and letting the rain come and take over and give them great germination. Now, unless you're planting with a drill, you can't really take advantage of the moisture that's in the soil. At Summit today, they talk about disking it up and putting the seeds in the ground and running over the cultipacker, and they're getting great germination this year compared to last year where they didn't get good germination because they just threw it on the soil. Folks, if you disc it up, tilling it up, you're drying out the soil. You're not bringing moisture to the surface. You're drying out what moisture's in the ground, then you're planting your seeds into it. So the reason that person's plot is growing this year is because they had moisture immediately. They didn't get rain for 3 weeks, they stated last year. Didn't matter if you drilled it, disked it, tilled it, cultipacked it, whatever they did. When you seed and you wait 3 weeks, you're gonna get very, very poor germination no matter how you plant it. A drill would be the best, but I'd say a drill applies to 5–10% of you at the most out there or less when it comes to food plotting. It's very expensive. You have to have expensive equipment to do it. I don't use it. I don't think there's a need to. There's certain times where I'd like to have a drill, but you don't have to have one to have great food plots. We plant a total of over 20 acres in Wisconsin and Minnesota, and we don't use a drill. So when it comes to salvaging your plots, there's a lot you can do. Rain really saves the day when you come in. You're better off using a cold hardy oat or pea like our Tundra Oats and pea blend going into early September, and you had the intentions of planting brassica but you didn't get any moisture. You're better off waiting for moisture, planting grains a little bit later than you are trying to push it early without moisture no matter how you plant. So there's always a way to save your food plots. If nothing else out here, if we get drought now until end of September, well, you can bet I'm going to come in here about October and I'm going to plant, just broadcast 250 pounds of rye, probably 100 pounds of our oats and peas, put a big mix in here and enjoy the season because we'll have green. I don't care if it's low, it'll be thick and lush. It's not going to grow up and compete with each other. It's not going to get that height because we're planting it late. So we're just looking to fill space horizontally, not vertically. There's always a way to save the day. Don't fret if your food plots look really poor. You might want to just change your game plan up a little bit. Head into the season knowing that you have some great plots of green. There's still a lot of ways to get it done. We hope we can help you with this information and that you can go into the season with beautiful fields of green and have a great hunt this fall.